Both of these laptops here, the M1 MacBook Air and the newer MacBook Neo, are very similar, but still, after reviewing and actually using both, there are some advantages each one has over the other. So I'm gonna put them side by side and go over the biggest differences that I was actually able to notice from the physical design, features, battery life, performance, the future software support of each, then of course what I at least think is actually the better device. You can get the M1 Air refurbished or used for around $300, and the Neo starts at $500 if you're a student, or $600 if you're not. But to get the Air at that price, it will probably be a little more inconvenient, but I'll get into that towards the end. To quickly go over the specs of each, the Air has the M1 with 8 cores of CPU and 7 cores of GPU, and the Neo has the A18 Pro chip with 6 cores of CPU and 5 cores of GPU. Both of these have 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. Now, unlike the Neo, for the Air, you actually can get a model of it with 16 gigabytes of RAM and I believe up to a terabyte of storage. The Neo can only upgrade to 512 gigs of storage, and there is no upgrade option for RAM. I mean, those are all just numbers. I'll be throwing some real life comparisons at both of these side by side to see what the actual differences are with using them. And you're gonna see a pretty common theme here. These are very similar, like the weight for one, because these feel identical. I think officially the Neo is a 1/10 of a pound lighter. They're pretty much the exact same size, with the Air being a little bit thinner, but both will be plenty portable, and both are also built very well, from the hinge to like the body flex in the keyboard. The aluminum body is going to be way better than any plasticky alternative. And both of these laptops are 13 inches. Technically, the Air is 13.3, so it's a little bigger, but having them in front of you side by side, I can't notice the difference, at least. And I do want to hit on either the least or most exciting part. That has to do with the colors. Now, the M1 Airs are like the metallic-y standard MacBook colors, which are nice, but I don't think it comes close to like the bolder and much more fun colors that the Neo offers, like the silver, the pink, the interesting radiated neon yellow, and then unbiased here, the best one is indigo. Next, to compare the displays, starting with brightness, the Neo can actually get 100 nits brighter, and that is noticeable, I find, especially if you're working in a room with a lot of windows. The top bezel of the Air is noticeably thicker than the Neo, but again, in terms of screen real estate, they feel identical. But the Air potentially does have an advantage with the True Tone feature that's not offered on the Neo. Essentially, what it does is change the color of your display, so no matter what environment you're in, the colors will look the exact same. I don't know, it's a nice feature to have, I guess, but I personally turn it off anyways. And the resolution is technically higher on the Air, but it's by such a small margin that, again, I just don't think people are gonna notice. As far as the colors and richness of the display, compared to something like my MacBook Pro, there's a big difference between these two and that. But looking at the Neo and Air side by side, again, in the real world, there's not that much of a difference. Although I will say, I think the colors look slightly better on the Air. Both of these do support external displays. For the Neo, you can plug in one 4K 60 monitor, and for the Air, it can support one 6K 60 monitor, but due to the fact the cheapest 6K monitor is close to 2 times the cost of a MacBook Neo, I just don't really think that's applicable for the target audience here. Now, as far as the trackpads and keyboards, believe it or not, there are some differences here, I think most notably with the trackpad. The M1 Airs is exactly like what every other modern MacBooks feels like to me, and it's great. I think as far as laptop trackpads, they're the best I've ever used. And sometimes I even prefer to use them over a mouse, but maybe I'm weird. The Neo's trackpad is a little bit more like older MacBooks because it has that physical like diving board click down style. A lot of people, and I mean even myself included, were kind of hesitant of that, but actually using it, it feels really nice. It's pretty satisfying, honestly, and you can click anywhere at all on it and it'll register your click perfectly. You do still have the option for tap to click, and of course you can use all of the standard macOS gestures on it. Unlike something like the M1 Airs though, you do have less customizability and you don't have a feature like quiet click. I mean, the Neo's is definitely louder, but it's not like it's obnoxiously loud or anything, but it is a bit smaller, both width and lengthwise. Now, the M1 Air has one keyboard design feature that I am a huge fan of, and even modern MacBooks, including Airs, don't have, and that's the tapered or wedge style of wrist rest. I find it to feel a lot more natural and comfortable, less so when it's on your lap and more so when you have it on top of a table. The function keys are all half-sized on the Air, and it does have Touch ID by default, which can't be said for the Neo. Although you can get it on the Neo, you just have to pay the $100 upgrade, which also doubles your storage, and honestly, I think that's worth it. Now, as far as the actual typing experience, I do find the Air to be slightly better. It just feels a little bit more firm. There's a little bit more of a press. And as a kind of bonus luxury feature, it has a backlit keyboard. The Neo doesn't. I think it would be nice to have. I don't think it's a deal breaker, especially considering how the Neo's keycaps are lighter compared to the black ones in those darker environments. Although I do think having a backlit keyboard will be more visible, the lighter keycaps do reflect light better and are easier to see than black ones. And by the way, I've made reviews on my M1 Air, the Neo, so feel free to check those out. And also be sure to subscribe if you want some more MacBook tech related content. Thank you. Now onto the category with debatably the most noticeable differences, and that has to do with the speakers, the webcam, and the microphones. The Air speakers are on the top, which is like every other MacBook other than the Neo, because it interestingly has these speakers on the side. But here's a little test so you can hear the differences for yourself. I think that the Air speakers are better. I think it comes down to two things. One, it's just better quality speakers. Two, the sound is firing up towards your ears and not against the table and all over the place. And that actually made me wonder, what would the Neo speaker sound like on a hardwood table versus like a softer surface? So here's another little test. Now the M1 Air does have the outdated 720p webcam. The Neo, on the other hand, did not skimp in this area at all and got kind of Apple's standard 1080p, and I do think it looks better. Now, as far as microphones, I found that they sound pretty similar. This is the M1 Airs, and this is what the Neo's sounds like. I think both are perfectly suitable for something like a video call. And actually, something I didn't realize until right now, having them side by side, the Air has a little green light when your camera's active, and the Neo does not. Now, port-wise, both of these on the outside seem to be the exact same, with a headphone jack, even though the Neo's is in a bit of a different location, and two USB-Cs. But on the inside, they have some differences. The Neo has one USB 3 port, which is the back one, and a USB 2 port, which is the front one. That is some outdated technology. The Air has both not only USB 3 but Thunderbolt 3 ports, so they can be used for quicker transfers, display, and generally more connectivity. In my Neo review, to transfer the same around 30 gigabytes of files took like 20 seconds on USB 3 and 12 minutes on USB 2, so that's a huge difference. But on the Air, both of the ports transfer at the same speed and in theory at a faster max speed than the Neo, but using the same files, drive, and even cable, it actually took a bit longer at 37 seconds. Related to transferring files is downloading files, and with the Neo, it should in theory be faster since it supports Wi-Fi 6E, and the Air only supports Wi-Fi 6. So to see if this actually makes a difference in real life, I downloaded the same exact file from Google Drive at the same time, and the Air was actually faster, which was interesting. But I just don't think this matters that much. How often is a casual user going to be downloading big files or transferring big files, specifically to the Neo, and needing both ports to do so? Like, to me, both seem fast enough where it matters. Something like boot speeds, both are able to fully boot in around 15 seconds, which still is plenty fast. Now, luckily, unlike transferring, for charging, it doesn't matter which USB-C port you use for the Neo, both will charge at the same exact speed. The Neo does come with a 20-watt charger, which is a little slow, but it caps the charging at 30 watts anyways. For the Air, it can pull more watts when charging, but that doesn't actually mean it charges to 100% faster. Plugging in the Neo and Air both at 18% with the appropriate chargers for the max speeds on each. The Neo took about 2 hours and 20 minutes to hit 100%, and the Air took about an hour and 55 minutes. So yeah, the Air is faster, but the Neo is not far behind. This is probably because the A18 chip in the Neo is very efficient, so it just doesn't need as big of a battery. Both of these should last you through an entire day. I've gotten around 10 to 12 hours on each of these, just doing some basic work on kind of like a medium brightness. When I charge them both to 100%, set them at a matching brightness, and let a 4K YouTube video play, 3 hours later, the Neo dropped by 21% and the Air dropped by 24%. And keep in mind that the Air has a 96% max battery capacity. They're, yet again, basically identical. I mean, it's heavily dependent on having good battery health, which in the current market of M1 MacBook Airs is not guaranteed. Now, most people probably aren't going to be editing videos on this, but I do want to test what the power and battery life's like doing a higher power task like video editing. And since both of these are only rocking 256 gigs, I'm plugging in a completed project on an external drive. This is the MacBook Neo review video, actually. So this is 4K 422 10-bit footage shot on a Sony FX3, and this has all been edited in a 4K timeline. And we are skimming back at real speeds. If I scroll over here and click play, it plays back smoothly. What about 2 times speed? Yeah, actually, it's playing back fine on 2 times speed too. Now, the reason I'm actually not more impressed is because on my M1 Air, I edited the entire M1 Air video on it, and it did almost everything I needed it to. Granted, not nearly as smooth, but it was capable enough to finish. And again, with this whole video showing how comparable these are, I'm not surprised, and that's crazy to say, that this thing is editing real videos. Now, it's important to note that I'm editing on Final Cut Pro, which is the software made by Apple, so it's going to be far more optimized compared to some other options, especially on these lower power devices. But for exporting, this might be a bit of a different story because neither of these laptops have fans, so the performance might throttle so they don't overheat and explode. So of course, that's exactly what I'm going to be testing, and also tracking how much battery it burns. So exporting out the first 3 minutes, the Neo took an hour and 10 minutes and drained 34% battery from 55 to 21. And the Air took just under 6.5 minutes, and it was only drained 8% from 73 to 65. I almost feel like I did something wrong here, but since it is rendering the files from an external drive, it could be a mix of slower transfer speeds, slower internal drive speeds, and the A18 chip of the Neo is less powerful compared to the M1 for tasks like these. But it is interesting how much of a difference there is, because just skimming through the project on the timeline was very smooth on both of these laptops. But I guess exporting is just a whole nother level. I think it's safe to say that either of these options power-wise are going to be suitable for 95% of the users. Like 6 years ago when the M1 Air released, people said 8 gigabytes is not enough in 2020. People are now saying the same thing in 2026. Plus, RAM with Macs works differently. You have swap memory, which taps into your internal drive and kind of temporarily uses it as extra RAM as needed. So that mixed with the software optimization with macOS, it goes a lot further than you'd think. But the M1 Air is treading on that 5 to 7 year line before Apple usually drops support for their laptops. Now, Apple hasn't dropped support for any of their M series laptops yet. I think even if the M1 Air is dropped, it's totally fine. Just because it wouldn't get the latest major macOS updates doesn't mean it's not still getting security updates. It definitely doesn't mean that the laptop is now bricked and unusable. But from today, naturally, the Neo is set to have a longer lifespan, especially software-wise, because it like just came out 2 weeks ago. And it's great to see that you can buy a new MacBook that is excellent for $500 or $600. But honestly, to me, it might be more impressive that you can get a MacBook from 6 years ago that's equal to, if not in my opinion, the overall better device for $300. Like the M1 Air is essentially the Neo, just with the bonus luxury features like the backlit keyboard, the better speakers. But my recommendation for people is, by default, just get the Neo. With the type of audience these devices target, the shopping experience for the Neo will be so much easier. You're gonna be able to check out display models of it in stores, which I think is pretty important. You're gonna have a strong return policy, a base warranty, longer support, and because it's brand new, you just don't have to worry about other people's finger grease. Because when I bought the M1 Air, a lot of what I saw had a lot of dinks and dents and, well, most importantly, terrible battery health, if it even listed it at all. Like with my experience buying it, everything went right, and it was still much more of a headache than just buying the Neo. But the truth is, for devices that set out to be laptops, they both do that incredibly well. So let me know which one you would choose, or maybe you have chose, but thank you for watching and feel free to subscribe for more.